Welcome to Simsbury Happenings. I'm Eric Wellman, a former radio show host and journalist. I moved to Simsbury with my family about a year ago for a job in, of all things, insurance. But first Selectman Lisa Heavner asked me to put my journalism hat on from time to time to talk to her and sometimes others about important stuff going on in town. And we thought we'd start things off by talking about the town budget. In particular, the Selectman's budget. It is $19.6 million, and something that should probably be of interest to all of us because it is how our property taxes are spent. Lisa, thank you so much for sitting down with me.
Well, thank you for doing this, Eric, and welcome to Simsbury.
Thank you very much.
To let people know where you're from and when you moved in.
Sure. So I moved here about a year ago. It will be a year in April, from Cleveland, Ohio. And my wife grew up in Simsbury, so this isn't a new town to her, and I certainly spent a lot of time coming back and forth and visiting our family here. So no stranger to Simsbury, but really glad to be here.
Okay, well, what did you like about Simsbury? What made this choice?
So number one thing, definitely the free babysitting that is now 5 minutes away from our house as opposed to a full
That's
plane
it.
ride.
That's all you need.
Absolutely. But no, one of the things that's just stood out to us about Simsbury in particular is just the schools are incredible. Some of the best in the state, some of the best in the country. We have a 3-year-old daughter, so something that is definitely on our mind. Not to mention, love the outdoor stuff like the biking and hiking trails and the summer concerts on the lawn. I could go on and on, but we're excited to be here and take advantage of what 2016 has to offer.
Well, excellent. We're glad you're here, and thank you for doing this today. And I think some of the things you just listed, when you think about the budget, what does the budget pay for? Well, it's the things we love about Simsbury. It's our schools, our roads, our parks, our outdoor spaces, the library.
Yeah, so one of the first things that I looked at when we bought a house is how much the property taxes are going to be. And I understand that the typical Simsbury resident spends somewhere around $7,400 a year in property taxes.
That's right.
So talk to me a bit about where that money goes. So about 75% actually goes to the schools.
That's right.
And then is it around 20% that's considered the Selectman's budget?
It's about 22 to 25, depending on how you look at it. The operating budget is about 20%, and then about 5% of that is debt service on capital projects, because all capital projects, even if they're Board of Education projects, are considered Board of Selectmen projects. Okay. So it depends on how you do that. But then there's also another small part of the budget that is actually the fire district.
Okay.
And people don't realize this, but they're not actually part of the town. They're their own taxing district. So there are actually 3 parts to the budget.
So for every $100 I spend in property taxes, about $75 goes to the schools.
That's right.
Another 20, a little more, goes to what's known as the First Selectman's budget. What are the kinds of things that's included in there?
Well, that's a great question. When I go to visit the high school and they say, well, what does the town do? It's kind of funny because most people don't realize what the town does. But you drove on a road to get to this interview, so we do the roads.
I did, yeah.
We do the snow plowing, as we had our March snow event. Very exciting snow event.
Oh my gosh, can you believe it?
So that's one of the largest portions of our budget. The other largest portion of our budget is public safety. Yeah. So those are our police officers, and we do community policing in Simsbury, so they do a lot of public outreach, and they're around in the community. They look at it as not as law enforcement, but public safety, so they're there to interact with the community to keep everyone safe. So we're really proud of our police department, but those are our 2 biggest budgets. I don't know if you've had a chance to visit Simsbury Farms yet with your daughter, Jana.
I have. That's where she had her 3rd birthday party.
Oh, where'd she do that? At the pool?
Yeah, at the playground.
At the playground.
Yep.
So that's one of the things we do. That's Culture, Parks, and Recreation. We have the skating rink, the 2 pools. All these summer activities is done through the town. We do social services. We're in the building of the senior center, taping right now, so it's the senior center. And then, of course, our award-winning library. And then on top of that, we do the things that towns have to do, like issue birth certificates, death certificates, land transfers and stuff like that, building permits.
So $19.6 million. Is our taxes going up?
You know what? That is an excellent question, and I don't have the answer yet because the budget is still in process. The way people say, well, if your budget is going up, and our budget is right now at 3.38 because the Board of Selectmen has been working with me on it. Well, that must mean taxes are going up, right?
Right.
Because you think taxes are driven by budgets. But that isn't always the case. There are several things that drive the mill rate or your tax rate. They are certainly the budgets, ours being one of them. The Board of Ed is a major driver on the budget, as 75% of your taxes go there. But the other thing that drives the mill rate or your taxes is how much the grand list has grown, how much new development is there new revenue coming in.
Yeah.
And
so what's happening on that front?
Well,
here in town?
great news. I'm
Yeah.
really happy to say that it's the highest it's been since I've been on the board. So we came in at 1.04%. So that's about $22 million in new value that the town is creating, and that translates to about $850,000 in new revenue for the town. So yes, there was a budget increase. Now remember, a 3.75% budget increase on a tiny budget can be less dollars than a 2% increase on a large budget. So I'm always hesitant to use percentages. But then the fourth leg is grants you get from the state. And there are a couple things that are happening at the state level that will impact our residents favorably. One, the state has decided to do revenue sharing with the towns in their sales tax. So we're getting a percent of the sales tax revenue from the state, which for Simsbury translates to about $775,000 a year.
Yeah.
And the other thing the state is doing is they have lowered the mill rate on cars across the state to 32 mills.
Yes.
So we're at,
So when I saw that, it means that my car property taxes are going to be going down a bit. And is the state coming in and replacing that money for the towns?
Yes, they have agreed to make whole towns that lose revenue, because you're right. If our mill rate's 38, actually I don't remember the full number. I told you not to ask me numbers before.
The other thing I said, Lisa, don't talk about mill rates, because no one knows what that is.
But the bottom line is, yes, it will be a drop. And for the average person in town, and I'm not saying average knowing that everyone has different cars, but the average resident in town has 2 cars, and will get about $6 in savings a month with the reduction in the mill rate. Now, our family will not, because my husband's car is really old.
Okay.
But if you're a normal person, or you're the median person, the family with 2 cars, you will see about $6 a month reduction in the mill rate for cars on a medium level. So that's a reduction there. So there are some scenarios out there, and it's, Eric, we had an initial conversation a few weeks ago about this, and I said this is such a difficult budget to explain. Because there are so many moving parts. But there are scenarios out there where if you take what you pay in both your property tax and your car rate together, that number may go down for a number of residences, or just be a small number increase, depending on where both boards come in. We're still in the budget process, so we don't know where the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen will come in, and eventually where the Board of Finance comes in. The way the budget process works is I give my budget, so it's the first Selectman's budget. I present it to the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen last Wednesday adopted it, so it's no longer my budget. It is now the Board of Selectmen's budget. Then we will go and present to the Board of Finance, and we're doing that on the 29th. And if they adopt it, which they probably won't do on that night, they'll take it under consideration. But if they eventually adopt it, it becomes the Board of Finance's budget. And then eventually it goes to referendum and it becomes the people's budget.
Okay, so we vote on that?
You do.
The taxpayers, okay.
Yes, and so when you think about, am I going to have a tax increase? I wish I could give you a hard answer, but I don't know exactly.
Because there's a lot in flux right now. So the 3.75% as it's proposed, what would it mean for the typical taxpayer?
Well, it's down. It's already come down, so it's 3.38. But generally, what it would mean, we're calling this the tic-tac budget.
The tic-tac budget.
Because really, the budget increase I proposed was the equivalent of 2 packs of Tic Tacs a month.
Okay.
Now, that's a budget increase. It doesn't mean a tax increase. So I was just proposing that we increase our spending 2 Tic Tacs a month. That still may mean your taxes are flat at the end of the day, and we don't have that answer. But we're talking, I think sometimes, I know my board, in fact, initially when I heard 3.75, it sort of takes your breath away. You know, what's going on here?
Yeah.
But the key is not to think about it as budget percentage. It's all these factors that come together: grand list growth, state aid, Board of Education budget. Where is it all coming together? At the end of the day, you want to look at the tax level. And I think both boards, the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education, along with the Board of Finance, are committed to keeping the mill rate as low as possible. But we're also committed to maintaining the value in Simsbury.
Yeah.
Because sometimes people forget, sometimes I forget, that the taxes we pay, well, it doesn't go to somewhere else. It's not going to some faraway place. It's going to the roads you drive on every day, the police officers you see in the street, to the teachers who teach your children, to the seats they sit on. So the great thing about a local budget, unlike the state or the federal budgets that we see out there, every dollar you spend is coming back to you directly. It's not going somewhere else. You know, there was a few years back, although I haven't done the calculation in the last 2 years, it's the case that for every dollar that Simsbury sends to the state, we get about 8 cents back. So sometimes your taxes, they're still going to good things, but you may not see it directly. Whereas the municipal budget, everything you spend is coming directly back to you.
So it stays here in Simsbury.
And it's going to things, you know, when you say, well, it's going to municipal workers, well, you know, it's Mickey at Social Services, or Kathy who runs the senior center, or, you know, the person who drives the plow that waves to you and your children. It's going to people you know and see every day.
Yeah. So talk to me a little more. You mentioned about some of the uncertainty that's happening at the state level. You know, for those of you who haven't been following along, we're talking about this year it's an over $200 million budget gap. 2017, I think it's approaching $1 billion. So some of the money that you're expecting to get from the state, be it Simsbury's portion of the sales tax or other money, how certain are you that that money is going to come?
Well, you know, I think that that's a great question. And I don't know the answer to that entirely, which is probably not the thing for a politician to say. But what I can tell you is this. What I know right now is what they promised us. And they promised us a share of the sales tax and to make us whole on the car tax. What I also know is that if they don't keep that promise, the state has, you know, made their promise that they're not going to raise taxes. If they don't keep their promise to municipalities, they are raising taxes. Right. They will be raising taxes at the municipal level. Because
they're shifting the burden from the state to the local community.
So the question is, are the economic realities out there going to be such that they end up breaking their promises? I don't know, Eric.
Yeah.
I don't think so, because everything, you know, well, I shouldn't even say I don't think so. Right now, we're not planning on that, because they have, from our lobbyists, CCM and Cost, who have met with the majority leadership at the Democrats, had asked them, and right now they said they're going to hold. So could that change in 2 hours? Yes. In fact, I do check the news about every 2 hours, because it seems like just when you think have things under control. But, you know, there could be some other thing that comes along that causes them to do something. So how do you budget under those circumstances? It's very difficult. You have to budget with what you know at the time. And then I think the Board of Finance has done a good job sort of planning for contingencies as things may come up. Are you going to have lost revenue at some point? Are you going to have increased revenue? What's the uncertainty with the state? I mean, the bottom line is it's very frustrating, because, as you know, our budgets are in the process of being done. And the state sometimes changes its mind after we've done our budget. It is probably the most frustrating thing as a municipal official, is how the state government operates. And I wish I could tell you it wasn't a mess, but it's a little bit of a mess out there.
So another thing the state did that really left me scratching my head, maybe you could help me out by understanding what was the rationale, and then how is Simsbury preparing to deal with this. And I'm talking about the 2.5% cap for budget increases. That goes into effect, I think, starting in 2017?
It does. So
just first explain what this means.
The rationale, I'm not sure I fully understand. But what they have done is, I had told you that we're getting a percent of the sales tax revenue, right?
Right.
But as a condition of getting that money, they're saying you have to hold to a 2.5% budget increase, not
a tax increase, but a budget increase.
But a budget increase. Right. And as you know, sometimes your budgets increase, but taxes don't.
Right.
As we just went through that scenario a few minutes ago.
Right.
So it is a crazy thing to base, if you want to hold towns accountable. It doesn't take account if you're growing your grand list, like Simsbury is, right?
Right.
Because when you're growing your grand list, your budgets may go up, but your taxes not.
Right.
Because you got to do more roads, you may have to hire more police officers, but you can afford to because your grand list has gone up.
Right.
So it punishes towns that are growing. The other thing it does is it's a little bit of a disenfranchisement of your vote, because in Simsbury, the budgets, as you know, they start with me, go to the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, but eventually they go to the voters.
Right.
And aren't the voters in the best position to decide whether they want to increase
Right.
what is spent for the town? There are times when communities want to spend money.
Right.
Maybe they want to improve their roads or their schools or do a new project that is valued to the community. And aren't the voters the best people to judge that? What will happen is if we don't, it's not all the money from the state that gets cut, but a portion of that 775. So it's, but the worst part is you have to, not the worst part, all of it's not good, but they're going to require towns to write a note to taxpayers in their tax bills saying we went over the cap.
Really?
Really.
That's very punitive.
It's very beautiful. So I may write another note.
So is there anything that you can do in preparation, knowing that's coming, to, I don't know, mitigate some of that risk?
You know, I don't know that there is. I mean, it is important that we not slash the budget this year. I mean, not devastate the budget.
Because those increases are based off of this year.
year's.
Okay.
On the other hand, you don't want to inflate the budget, so we're not inflating
sure.
the budget either. But it has been frustrating because Simsbury for the last 8 years has kept its budget so tight and so flat. So we're actually in a position that makes it more challenging than other towns that have gone steadily up because their base is better. We are proud of what we did because we gave our citizens the time value of their money. So in other words, we let them keep their money to invest on their own instead of giving it to the town. But I do know that our lobbyists, CCM and Cost and CRA, go down at the State House trying to lobby and say, well, if you're going to do this cap, let's put some reasonableness in it. Because right now they're excluding arbitration. So that means all negotiations with unions are going to go to arbitration because it's excluded from the cap. There are a lot of things that are not good public policy decisions. Another thing that's excluded is capital. So that's an encouragement.
So buildings.
But what it does is it encourages more building. Instead of paying an operating cost and being done with it, encourages you to take out a loan, which is bad public policy. It is a bad way to manage as an incentive. You don't want to incentivize that. Sometimes, you know, not all borrowing is bad, but this is not a good incentive. So I find it a very frustrating and baffling piece of legislation.
Talk to me about some of the things that Simsbury is doing to try to keep costs down.
Okay, so I've got, actually, if you folks get a chance to watch my budget presentation, I have 4 slides of just cost savings, but a couple of ones that we have on the horizon coming up is we are considering purchasing street lights from Eversource and replacing the lighting with LED lighting. And that will give us about $85,000 a year in savings.
Oh my gosh, just in the light.
Yeah, just in lighting and electricity costs. The other thing we did is we did energy upgrades at Town Hall. Again, lighting. And we did that on an on-bill financing, so it has a 2 to 4 year return on investment, but we're going to pay that off early. So that will bring operating budget savings of about $30,000 per year. So those are 2 things that we've done over the years. We've done healthcare consolidation. Oh my gosh, you name it. We've done it. We've tried everything. You know, we're looking into the selling of sand to do revenue generation. We work with the Board of Ed on healthcare. Our employees have been wonderful. They've contributed in pension contributions and other post-employment benefits. So our unions have worked with us. Everybody sort of understands that we need to look everywhere for savings. So we do take an aggressive approach to that. If you want to see which ones we've done, I encourage people to look at my budget presentation because we list every single one we've done.
To what extent is Simsbury and the Valley towns in general working together to, share some costs and save money that way?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. I think in some ways that's probably the state of Connecticut's greatest challenge is how do you do that? There have been some obstacles out there. that have prevented towns from doing that,
Yeah.
which is kind of strange. But the other thing we've done is, one of the initiatives we're working on is the Connecticut Nutmeg Network, which is it's almost an internal thin cloud that towns are participating in that will enable all towns to share software costs, like HR, maybe assessment. It's a whole network that will enable towns to share. Before then, everyone was on their own separate network, and there was no commonality there. Maybe share redundancy in emergencies. You want to do your downloads of savings not on site but off site, so you might be able to use someone else's site. So that's one of the things that the town is really working on. We do a lot of joint bids. So a lot of our regional hosts, like CCM, Connecticut Council of Municipalities, our CROG, Capital Region of Governments, will do joint bids for the towns in our area, and so we'll enable to piggyback on those joint bids so that we can all get the best cost. We do a lot of that. I do meet with the leaders of the Farmington Valley Collaborative. So every first selectman or town manager, we meet once a month to talk about best practices and what everyone's doing and to see how we can help each other. I think everybody is committed to this. One of the challenges in the state of Connecticut is there are 169 towns, and each one has their own.
Connecticut's not a large state either.
Right. One of the things that the proposed legislation out there, and I haven't had a chance to look at it in depth, but is to consolidate 911 call centers, because right now we have one almost for every town. And most states only have a few. And we have,
coming from Ohio, we had, I think, one, or I don't know if it's exactly one, but I want to say one for the county. So we were talking about multiple communities working together there. But one of my observations having come here is that folks in Connecticut complain about the high tax burden.
They do.
But then when it comes to the things that would really cut down on costs, that, like you're suggesting, there doesn't seem to be a huge appetite for that.
Well, I think that that's also true. I mean, we have come to expect a quality of life in Connecticut, which is wonderful. Like, I mean, you came here, the beautiful outdoors, the great schools. We're within 2 hours of Boston, Providence, and New York. The location can't be beat. You can get to the mountains, you can get to the ocean. So it is a wonderful place to live. And I think one of the things I think about when I do the budget is value instead of cost. And are we giving our residents value for the dollars that they're paying? I know the taxes are high, but I work hard every day to make sure that they feel, that you feel, that I feel we're getting value for those dollars. You think of the Performing Arts Center, right? You think of the schools, you think of our roads, you think of our parks, how many places there are to hike, bike, the trails, you think of Simsbury Farms. So, and you think of the library. When you think of all those things, I hope they make you happy and proud. I think that investment in value has paid off, because we've been listed as Money Magazine Best Place in America to Live, a top 10. So people are
25 minutes into the interview for you to get to that fantastic point. Number 9, right?
Right, so I should have started with that. I guess the point is, this investment in value is what brings new residents like you to town. It's what brings businesses to town. It is economic development, and it's also what makes us proud to call Simsbury home. So everything we do, we try to give you value.
So we've just got a few minutes left, and I was hoping we could take a step back for a second and just look at, like, what are the trends that we're seeing here in Simsbury? You said that there is growth, more people are moving to town. I guess who's moving here? Like, who are these people, and where are they moving to? Like, what are the kinds of houses they're moving into?
Well, I think some of the growth we're seeing a lot of is apartment growth and multifamily growth. And part of that is it's sort of an interesting situation we're in. Our senior population is growing, and the millennial population is coming in. So our seniors are looking for places to downsize to, and millennials, we know, are coming in with less of a desire to own. They're more mobile, they don't have pensions, they like the free lifestyle without the responsibilities. So you're seeing a little bit of both, downsizing from seniors and millennials coming in, which is both a national trend. So that's a lot of what's happening. A lot of people are concerned about that, because will that change the character of town? And I don't know. I hope not. I think our architects have done a great job trying to build in keeping with the character. But on the other hand, the advantage of having people move in is you've got feet on the street, and then that theoretically attracts businesses, retail commerce. And so I think there are some exciting times out there. I hope people are paying attention, checking it out, because it's some exciting times. But change is always hard.
Yeah. So you've been in this job, I guess, officially since January, right? But a little bit longer than that.
Well, a year. I took over when Mary Glassman resigned, and then I won the election in November.
Yeah. So what do you, having become the first selectman and peered under the hood of the town, you've lived in Simsbury, coming up now on about 15 years?
About 13, yeah.
About 13 years.
Yeah.
What do you know about the town now that you didn't know that was a nice surprise?
I didn't realize how many people were doing so many wonderful things and volunteering. The greatest thing about this job is that you get to meet people. This is how I met you. And how many people are so involved in this community, and they're everywhere. People just work hard. They aren't out there screaming for attention, not out there screaming for thank yous, but it just amazes me how many people are committed to volunteering in this town. And having been a first selectman, I get to see that. I didn't appreciate I always knew that this was a great community, but as first selectman, you really get to see what people are doing, and it's just really inspiring.
So we are here to talk about the budget, and I bring that up just to say, hey, what are the next steps?
Well, the next steps is I'm going to present the Board of Selectmen's budget to the Board of Finance next Tuesday, and we'll take questions, see if they have suggestions or changes they want us to make. Then it will go into the Board of Finance's purview for their evaluation considerations. They look at things not just as budget, but mill rates and revenue and other considerations like that. And then they will vote on a budget eventually to put forward to the people for the people's vote. There will be an opportunity for public hearing through the Board of Finance. I do encourage people to come to that and to continue to reach out to their elected officials. I mean, this is your budget. And we're pretty accessible. You can find us at Fitzgerald's or around town.
Around town. Lisa, thank you so much for spending the time with me.
Well, thank you, Eric. This was great.
Sure. This is Simsbury Happenings, and we will be back next month with another interesting conversation.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.